Today's lecture deals with the market of oligopoly. Remember, we have four types of markets: pure competition, monopolistic competition, monopoly, and oligopoly. Most of what you buy is produced by oligopolists. So what are the characteristics of an oligopoly type of market? Number one, you have few producers. And if you have few producers, then number two, it's going to be relatively difficult to enter the market. Number three, the type of products that we're going to be looking at are products that are differentiated. And therefore, number four, advertising is going to be stressing those differences, but advertising in this type of market is going to be on a national level, which means it's going to be a much more expensive as opposed to monopolistic competition. Here, we are going to be spending millions of dollars per minute of advertising. So, in order to explain the process by which price is set in an oligopoly, we are going to be looking at the demand curve. So here we have the beginning of the setup for an oligopolistic demand curve. As you can see, it is made up of two types of curves. One is relatively steep, that's your D2, and also you have a marginal revenue that corresponds to that. Your marginal revenue is in green. And then you have a relatively flat demand curve, that's your D1, and the corresponding marginal revenue, and that would be marginal revenue 1. So now, the price is going to be set at what we will call the kink, and that's where the two demand curves cross. And that's where the price is going to be set, and this is going to be the quantity that we are going to be producing. So how come price is going to be set right here and will really not change that much? Well, because there is a high level of interdependency between the producers. So the few producers that we have are going to be reacting to any change that their competitors are going to introduce. So this is the basis of our elimination of different parts of the two demand curves. So let's say that you, as an individual producer, would like to increase your price. Would you like the others to follow you? And the answer is yes, because if you're the only one who raises your price, then you're going to be losing customers who are going to go to the other producers. So what happens when you raise your price and you lose total revenue? Is your demand at that point elastic or inelastic? If you go back to the chapter on elasticity, you will see when price goes up and total revenue goes down, then the demand is elastic. So if we look at right here, we will see that that would be the demand faced by that individual producer who has increased his price without the others following. So now what we're going to do is eliminate the inelastic, because you would have been here if by raising your price you would have won. But as we just explained, you're going to be losing. So we take away this part of the demand curve, and we also have to take away the corresponding part of the marginal revenue curve, and that would be right here. So again, the only thing that is left is this relatively flat implied elastic demand curve and the corresponding green part here of the marginal revenue curve. So now let's see the other situation. What if you were to reduce your price? Would that be to your benefit? Well, it would be to your benefit if you are the only one who has lowered price, because you will be able to attract customers from your competitors. But if this is the case, when you lower your price, Will the others let you get away with it and take away your customers? And the answer is no. And as a result, if your price goes down and total revenue also goes down, then your demand is inelastic. So if it is inelastic, we have to take away the elastic part. That's the elastic part, because at this point you would have won by lowering your price. And the corresponding part of your marginal revenue to this, well, this is D1 and this is MR1. So we take this one away. So now, if we do that, take away the inelastic part above your price and the corresponding marginal revenue. And when you lowered your price, you also lost, so you are on an inelastic demand curve. Take away this part and take away this marginal revenue. So what you're left with is a kinked demand curve. This is where the two cross. So there's like a little kink here, and your marginal revenue curve has a gap, and that's the gap right here, okay, because they don't cross at the same point as your demand curves did. So how else could we interpret the importance of this particular gap? Well, remember that profit maximization happened when MC was equal to MR. But here, you could have different levels of marginal cost. It could be higher or lower, but as long as it is within the gap, there will be no change in quantity and there will be no change in price. So again, because of the fact that we have a kink in the demand curve and that your marginal revenue curves do not cross at the same point, we have a gap. And that gap says that although marginal cost could be higher or could be lower, as long as it is still within the gap, there will be no change in price and no change in quantity, because all of those, MC1, MC2, and even MC3, will put you at the same place where MC is equal to MR. Now, if your marginal cost goes out, then we have a new intercept, and that's a different story. So this is the most important part of your oligopoly, to try and derive your demand curve from the reaction of your competitors. So here's the same situation. Let me just repeat briefly. When price goes up and the others are not going to follow, you are losing, and therefore you are part of the elastic demand curve. Take away the inelastic and take away the marginal revenue from that inelastic demand curve. Now, if you lower your price, you are going to lose because the others will follow, and so you are on an inelastic demand curve. You take away this one, and you take away this marginal revenue curve, leaving you with a kink in the demand curve and a gap in your marginal revenue. So once you have derived the demand curve and the marginal revenue that has the gap, these two curves are going to show you both the interdependence as well as the price rigidity. So again, where is the interdependence? The fact that your move will be either followed or not followed. So those producers are going to be working together. So they are all interdependent, and their profits will be determined by how much change there is or how lack of change is going to take place. So if you are going to be reducing price and the others follow, this is what we call price wars. And in the 80s, we had many price wars, especially in airlines, for instance. So the companies started undercutting each other, and as a result, you had a lot of losses. And that was very beneficial in the short run for consumers, because you could fly to many destinations for very low prices. But in the long run, it was not good for consumers. And the question is why? Well, because some of those companies went out of business, and as a result, you had fewer producers or fewer airlines. And once there were fewer, it was more of a consolidation. At that point, prices started going up again. Another aspect of your oligopoly that relates to strategies is what we call the game theory. And from what we have covered so far, you could see that if all the oligopolists, let's say 3-4 producers, were to act together, if they were to collude and bring, collusion is not legal, but if they were to collude and bring those prices up and all together, then they would be winning. Now, if you have a situation where they are going to start undercutting each other's prices, that's like in price wars, then everybody's going to be losing in terms of profits. So now, what the game theory calculates is who wins and who loses. And from what we have covered, if you as an individual producer, if you are able to bring your price down and at the same time the others will not follow you, then you are going to be gaining. If on the other hand, you are going to be bringing your price up and the others are not going to follow you, then you are also going to be losing, because most of your consumers and customers will be moving to the other producers and to see how they could benefit from lower prices. One of the more important elements to strategies and to manipulation of prices is going to be your limiting the entry into the market. So how can an oligopolist limit entry of competitors into the market? Well, first, you're going to be looking at, for instance, the high cost of starting a business. So starting a business, if the costs are high, then that is going to stop many potential producers from coming in. And it's going to be similar also to the different limitations that monopolists had when it comes to government contracts, etc. Number two, you could also limit entry into the market by lowering the price when there is a new entry into the market. Walmart has been accused of doing that on many occasions. So let's say that you have a small town, you've got your grocery store, you've got your butcher, you've got your flower market, and you have also your pharmacy. Then Walmart comes in and sells all the same products in their main store. What they also will do is reduce the price on all those items like groceries, like meat, like flowers and medicine. They will reduce them, at least temporarily, so as to drive the other people out of business. And this is what we call predatory pricing. Predatory. And that, of course, is not something that we would like to encourage. This is not something that we would like to see. So lowering prices in order to drive other people out of business. And a large store can do that because they already have profits that they could use to pay the difference between the cost of production and the price at which they are selling their products. And another way that oligopolies are going to try and discourage others from coming in is to develop a bond between their customers, their consumers, and that particular company. So a frequent flyer miles will limit you, will encourage you to probably choose the airline that is going to give you some kind of a bonus, so to speak. Frequent buyer programs like, for instance, in grocery stores, you get points, and as a result, this is going to create more of a closer relationship, and price is not going to be as important as the all the different points and the benefits that you could derive from continuing with this one producer. So this would be the last type of market that we're looking at, and the one that really applies to most of what it is that you are buying. We're looking at about 3, maybe 4 producers who are supplying most of the products, and as a result, there's going to be heavy interdependence. And because they don't trust what the others are going to do as far as prices, and because of the strategies of following or not following, we are also going to have price rigidity. When those companies try to influence the market too much, they could either collude, which is not legal, or they are going to be faced with price wars, which again is going to be limiting the profits that they could make, and it's going to be hurting business. Thank you.